Why so mysterious? Just sit down and hang with us. Why so mysterious?
This is Why So Mysterious, the podcast where we attempt to fill the gap between the bodies we have and the lack of knowledge around them,
We're sharing our experiences and answering our own questions
with some help along the way.
to destigmatize tricky taboo topics.
The triple T's.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Why So Mysterious. I'm Raven,
And I'm Sara.
and today we are going to be okay, real quick.
Let's just backtrack
Wait a
before
second.
we even start.
I struggled with what to actually call this episode because
yes.
sometimes we come up with an episode topic and we just have like a general title.
Yeah.
And then we get a cooler title or
Yeah.
we're talking about something cool.
Okay. But we don't today.
Today we're just talking about sports and menstruation.
Yep.
So athletics, athletes, uterus bearing humans,
Yep.
and how the menstrual cycle can either be worked with or against
Ooh.
in the context of sport.
Oh, yeah.
Also, just so you know, I don't know about you, but personally, I am sports illiterate.
Absolutely. Me
So,
too, man.
okay. So just-
I've tried pretty much every sport
yeah,
there
you say
is.
yes to a lot of things.
I
and
am
say
a yes
no.
man. I'm a yes woman. There was one year in, I think it was grade 8, where I was like, I'd never done sports in my life. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to go through my high school experience without being on a team at some point. And so I signed up for every single sport I could.
Like extracurricular?
Yeah.
What is wrong with you?
Well, all my best friends were like mega athletes. Like,
Yeah.
I literally became best friends with like the top athletes in school, and I was like the only one that didn't do anything. I was like, well, I guess if I just want to hang out with you guys more, I'll just do sports.
Oh my God.
And then I signed up for basketball. I signed up for volleyball. I think badminton. I don't know, just a bunch of sports. I was terrible at all of them, but I won a lot of awards for effort.
Oh.
Yeah, I got the effort awards,
Oh.
which I am proud of. There's no aw.
I mean,
I'm
that's-
proud of.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I showed up. You know what I loved? I loved practices. I hated games so much. So
You
much.
love practices?
I loved practices. I would be in sports if it was just practices and no games.
Okay, I had the
Sign me up to whatever team that is.
complete opposite. I passed gym by 1% in grade 9 and by 2% in grade 10. And both of those times I purely passed because I show up with my gym strip.
Perfect.
And they can't fail you if you're
No,
there
they
every
can't.
day in your gym strip. But there were even times where we play like floor hockey and I would literally just stand there holding the stick and get yelled at like you're not participating, and it would be like, what are
"Yeah,
you gonna
fail
do
me."
about it? Or when I was in grade 7, I remember we played soccer on like a soccer field and I realized it looked like I was participating if I just ran back and forth. So
You're just like running in
run
the
back and
opposite
forth.
direction.
I am not a sports person. Also, quick aside, I know I've told you this story before, but it bears repeating. When I was 4 or 5, my dad put me in soccer, and he told me if the ball ever comes towards your face, just guard your face. So he did when you throw your elbows up and you kind of cage your face with your arms.
Yeah.
And
Smart
then
dad.
you're very smart. But then anytime anyone or anything, even if it wasn't the ball, came near me, I would just do that.
Oh yeah. I could
So
see you
kind of
do
like
that.
a turtle. And
Yeah.
my dad was like, the ball is rolling on the ground. You don't need to do that. So it was
Just
pretty...
like coming in your general direction. You're
yeah,
like, no,
it's
not
like,
me.
not the face. And so he took me out of soccer pretty quickly. I think I lasted maybe like 3 practices. And then
wow,
he put
okay.
me in an interpretive scarf dancing class.
Wow.
Which I thrived in.
I am not surprised.
It was literally just a tiny gym, and
so
this like
cute.
gypsy woman would like throw scarves in the middle of the room and then turn on music, and then all the kids would grab a scarf and then we just like run in circles.
So lovely. I probably would have loved that as a child.
I had a great time.
I was put in soccer when I was way too old. I think I was like 11 or something. And then it's like everyone else has been playing soccer since they were like 5.
Yeah.
And then my first time showing up was a game, and they put me on the field. And I was like, what the fuck? I don't even know what this game is.
I don't know how to play.
I don't know how to play. And they're like center left field thing. And I was like, what? And so I just kind of stood there and I was like, like who can help me? And so I hated games because I was like, I don't know what's going on. But practices I could totally do.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Yeah. But, okay, question.
Yeah.
When you were in high school, did you ever skip gym class by saying you had your period?
I personally didn't. I saw a lot of girls walk up to the teacher and say like, I have, and they would always say like lady problems or something like that. I think sometimes they were telling the truth and sometimes they weren't. My thing was I would just hide in the bathroom. I didn't need to make an excuse. I would just duck out and then put my feet up on the toilet and then just hang out for 20 minutes for the last few minutes of gym. But that is definitely a thing.
Oh, yeah. I was like, well, actually, every single girl in my class, this is when I was in Iceland, we were like the queens of, we just menstruated every single day. Like, we were menstruating for a year, pretty much. We had this extremely awkward, very like coach type gym teacher.
Male, I'm assuming.
Yeah, male. Yeah. I think he was like, I don't know, the school's like soccer coach or something.
Right.
And we would just have to walk up to him and be like, I have my period. And he's like,
I cannot.
Yeah, whatever. And he would just send us home.
What?
Yeah. Because we all lived like, it was weird. We all lived like super close to the school. So you would just go home because it was like an hour-long period or something. And so you just go home. Usually I just go home and smoke cigarettes. And that was it. I just menstruated for a year. And did no gym.
Well, one thing about like that is that I feel like if you really were into gym or you actually like are an athlete, which is what we're going to talk about today, it would be a real bummer to get it like and not be able to play because of it, because you're in pain or you feel sick or whatever like that. Probably, you know, it's not my personal experience obviously, but I know that it does impact.
Yeah. But I mean, like, as adults, we work out. I'm still not an athlete, but I do work out on occasion. So I think it's really good to know, like, what is a good workout for your cycle.
And when.
And, you know, so that's what I'm going to talk about is pretty much just, like, what works with your cycle.
So let's get into it. Why don't you tell me some information about the phases. My and the exercise.
Thing. Yeah, I know everything about the phases now.
You do.
Okay, so it's I would say it's like pretty straightforward based on how you feel during your cycle.
But this is more, I would say this is more for people who like push themselves to, you know.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, so. Valid. But in case you're totally oblivious to reading the signs of your body, you know. So we've got the first phase of the follicular phase, which is your period. So it's the first 7 days.
Okay.
That pretty much like, that one I would just read the room. Like if your body if you have endometriosis or you have any other condition and you cannot do workouts, don't do workouts.
Wait, hang on. The follicular phase is when you're menstruating? I thought it was like menstruation and then the follicular phase.
No, follicular phase, I might be fucking this up, but I'm pretty sure follicular phase is like the umbrella. Period falls within the follicular phase.
Okay. Because I know the follicular phase also sometimes is called the feel-good phase because it's your phase that you get. Hold for Google.
Follicular is 2 weeks, luteal is 2 weeks. But then each are broken. I really consider it more like 4.5 phases.
Right, because ovulation is so
ovulation is so short. Yeah. So follicular is from the first day of your period to the 14th day, roughly.
Got it.
If you have a longer cycle, it's,
okay,
you know, included in there.
Sure.
But so we're talking about the first 7 days, which is roughly your period.
Yeah.
If you can't handle working out, don't. Sometimes you might want to continue yoga or stretching or
I think the term
those
that I've
kind of
heard that
things.
I like with that is intentional movement.
Ooh, I like
So it's like
that
you
one.
can just take a walk,
Yeah.
or you can do some really chill yoga.
Yeah.
But it is
But
nice to
sometimes-
move your body a little
Yeah,
bit.
exactly.
Yeah,
But also no shame if you just
No.
need to lie in bed.
we understand.
Yeah, exactly. But maybe as your period starts to trail off,
Mm-hmm.
start to do a little bit more. But then, so we're talking about follicular phase part 2, which is the last 7 days of the follicular phase.
Okay, so you're probably potentially not bleeding anymore.
Hopefully you're not bleeding
hopefully, fingers
anymore.
crossed.
Yes, fingers crossed, because this is when you see your highest levels of energy. So we have 1 week where we are just like estrogen happy and we're like, wow, so much energy. I don't have that right now. I'm heavily in the luteal phase.
Me
hence
too.
My yawning right before we started this. So during the follicular phase, your body is preparing for ovulation.
Mm-hmm.
So you have high levels of estrogen, you're feeling really good, you're talking all clear,
Right.
and you're just, energetic. So this is when they say to do high intensity workouts.
Okay.
Because basically your heart is like, yes, give this to me. Like I
So
can
cardio.
handle a lot of fast heart beating. Boxing, strength training, spin classes, pretty much like any kind of like just your classic, just sweaty.
When I started working out a few years ago, I was going through a really rough breakup, and so I just decided to start boxing, which
Yeah.
was really good for me. But the first day that I was there and the trainer gives you the little tour, she goes, "Have you ever done high intensity workouts before?" And I just looked at her and went, "What is that?"
Yeah. And then you do it and you want to die.
Yeah, you want to hurl.
You want to hurl. Yeah. So do those. This is also when they say like, so if you regularly work out,
Mm-hmm.
this is when you want to push yourself further. So
Right.
if you do consistent workouts for your whole cycle and that's just like what you're used to, this is when you're best to like just push it further, add more weights, do a longer class, whatever. You have
Okay.
like your muscles bounce back faster, your endurance is longer. It all has to do with like the level of oxygen going to your muscles because your hormones actually like affect that. And then ovulation is pretty much the same. Like it's like a 3 to 5 day window. It doesn't really change too much because you're still really high in estrogen.
Right.
But it's like as soon as that's done, your estrogen just starts to like plummet, just goes down. And this is when it's most important to really like maybe tailor your workouts. Your luteal phase, which is the last 2 weeks before your period, is when you have like the biggest fluctuation in hormones. The mid luteal phase is when you reach exhaustion faster than any other time. I would say probably during your period, you're reaching exhaustion potentially, depending, like if you have a condition that makes your period really bad,
Right.
then it's probably similar to your luteal phase. But a lot of people don't have, like they maybe feel 1 to 2 days of like, feeling like ugh on their period,
Yeah.
but can still do regular workouts. But luteal phase is when most people find that it actually has like an effect.
Okay.
And mainly this, like, so you reach exhaustion because your body temperature is actually hotter. So
Oh,
you have an
yeah.
increased body temperature. Like we've all been there where you're just like, you're too hot, you need to stop. Like you
Right.
just reach that faster. So that's why you're reaching exhaustion faster.
Interesting. Yeah,
Right?
that's true. Yeah.
And so with that, like with the increased body temperature, you're also like a little bit depleted on hydration.
Mm-hmm.
So you really need to be basically just drinking more water and or drinking lots of water every day.
Yeah.
It's very important.
But it's especially important.
It's especially important. And then, okay, so this is what I'm going to read because it's actually kind of important. So that when they're talking about fluid, they're talking about like water, like drinking enough water.
Hydration.
This fluid distributes through your body during the luteal phase, creating a drop in plasma volume, which can compromise the amount of oxygen delivered to muscles. This drop reduces sweat rate, and since sweat helps your body cool down, it can also result in increased body temperature. So that's kind of all encompassing why your luteal phase is more difficult.
Interesting.
Yeah. So then basically during your luteal phase, because you are feeling more exhausted faster, they recommend more like bike rides. So where there's some intensity at some points, but you're like not going to a spin class where it's intense the whole time.
Right.
You've got some ups and downs.
It's a choice how
yeah, exactly.
intense you go.
You could just go downhill, and then take the bus home. Whatever. Swimming, aerobics, walking, jogging, like those kind of things. Weightlifting is good in the sense where it's like strength training. Like, have you ever done like...
I guess weight training doesn't have to be high
weight
intensity.
training isn't very high intensity. It is high intensity when you are doing like a rep.
Right.
But that's for like a short period of time. So your exhaustion level, like you're not going to be exhausted as fast. You might not be able to do like as many sets as you normally do.
Right.
But
you don't have to skip leg day.
You don't have to skip leg day. Exactly. But yeah, so that's kind of like, look at your right after your period, do the high intensity, do the sweaty workouts because your heart can like handle it. It is like a good time to do it. Your body is regulating temperature better.
Right.
Versus your luteal phase, your body isn't regulating temperature as well. So if you try to go to spin class, you're just going to be a sweaty, hot mess that's exhausted after.
You're probably going to feel
or
like
during.
terrible.
Yeah. But then they also say if you have the same workout schedule every single week, you can still do your workouts. You are just more tired after your Zumba class that you take every single day, whatever it is. It's just that like this is why you might feel like the 1 to 2 weeks it feels like a lot harder.
Yeah.
And then the other week you're like, oh, I could really keep going.
Right. Yeah.
So that's kind of basically it. Like it's pretty simple.
That's really interesting though. It's just like, I don't know, I just like learning how to listen to your body better. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, it makes sense. I'm like, yep, okay, I can see why.
It's also a good way to just like cut yourself some slack when you're just like used to doing really high intensity workouts, but like you feel like you just can't, but you should. And it's like, do you?
You know? Yeah. And that's why I'm like, if anybody tells you have to do, a certain amount of high intensity workouts a week, you're like, no, you know what? I don't.
That's for men.
I can just do it. Exactly. I can just do it in my follicular phase. And that's what you should tell them.
Love it.
Yeah. So that's it. That is the breakdown of the phases and how you should adapt your exercise for them.
Love it.
Yeah. So now you tell me, what's going on in the world of scandalous sports and menstruation?
On the topic of sports and menstruation, and we cast our eye to the past. Today I don't really have a scandalous story for you, although it starts with a little,
there's always a little scandal in there.
A little bit, yeah. But this is a really lovely story, except I did start it with a crappy one. So
wonderful.
This is menstruation and professional sports, and when it is picked on and when it is used to sharpen the tools of the professional athlete. So our story begins at the 2015 Australian Open. So this is,
What's
feel like
an Open?
It's a big tennis match.
Oh, okay. I thought it was.
It's the big game
it was soccer.
for tennis people.
Good thing I asked.
It's okay. Actually, next I was gonna reference tennis, so you would have got it. But that's totally something I could have fucked up too. So this is 2015, and I personally feel like the conversation around period positivity and period neutrality kind of was at the same time as Me Too started, which is 2017. Pre-2017, I would say the language around periods in the media, including social media, was like not very good. So
and just in general, I started building the brand in 2015.
Oh.
And people, like, I hadn't launched yet.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about this today. Even pre-launch, we were invited to do a fashion show, or like we got nominated to do a fashion show.
Okay.
And I was like, cool, like we're gonna do a fashion show. And it was like whoever nominated didn't tell them that it was period underwear. So we got through as a lingerie brand. Literally last minute, not last minute, it was like when maybe I was like starting to prepare for the show. They sent me an email and said, unfortunately, we've decided not to move forward with you in the fashion show because there's gonna be men and children at the show.
And children? Oh,
Yeah.
no, not the children.
Not the children.
What
They can't
the
know about menstruation.
fuck?
Yeah, isn't that crazy? I that literally popped into my head today, and I was like, that was so fucked up.
And children. I can't
Yeah.
believe
Because it was
that.
like, but there was other lingerie and swimwear brands going down the runway.
Yeah, tits and ass is fine.
Tits and ass is
but-
fine, but good, God forbid you menstruate in the product.
Also,
it's
bro,
not
the
like the models were
weren't-
menstruating.
Yeah.
Like they were just walking down there.
Oh my god. Okay, so way to set the scene
Yeah.
for how we were feeling about
This-
periods.
this is 2015.
So, yeah, Australian Open. A British tennis player named Heather Watson. So she had been like really crushing it in the lead up to the Open, winning all her games, doing, real good tennis stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And she was defeated in her first game at the Australian Open. And it was like in the tennis world was just like, how did that happen? So she'd been suffering from dizziness and nausea. And she was very like clearly uncomfortable on the court. And then afterwards, she was asked by the press, heard a recording of this.
It just was one of those days for me. I felt very lightheaded and low on energy. It's a shame that it's today. With the way I was feeling, it didn't do me any favours today.
Do you think playing a full week last week was a factor at all today?
I don't think so. The last couple of days I felt fine. I think it's just one of these things that I have, girl things, and it just, happens.
And when I heard that, and like I
That's-
listened to a recording of her
yeah.
saying that, and like my heart kind of like broke.
Sank. Yeah.
It's just like, one, like you tanked at this game, which was obviously really important to you, and
Yeah.
two, you can't even say
You can't even
why.
say why. Yeah.
It sucks. So anyway, the media like really jumped on this, and then all of a sudden there were like headlines everywhere that was like, Heather Watson blames period for tanking her tennis game.
Oh
and
my
blah, blah, blah. And
God.
it's just like, I mean, she kind of did.
She did.
And it seems like, yeah, that was definitely the reason
And
that
like,
she did so
I mean,
bad.
we've all had, everyone's had a bad period, but then there are
Oh,
people
yeah.
out there that have excruciating
Yeah,
periods,
yeah.
like debilitating periods.
Yeah, and if you have to play like a potentially like career making game or something like that, like that's a lot of pressure
And
anyway.
guess what actually also makes your periods worse? Stress.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
You know?
So it was kind of like a powder keg.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of like conversations happening in the media as well between like feminists and professors, and then also like athletes.
Yeah.
And a woman I'd never heard of cropped up. Her name's Annabelle Croft. She has some really weird opinions that are like very contradicting
Okay.
and then also hypocritical. I'm really not sure how to think about her. Anyway, so she was interviewed a lot when this happened because she actually had her own leak-proof underwear company.
Okay.
Yes, it's now defunct, but it was called
Oh.
Diary Doll.
Oh,
Very-
diary?
Diary, like you write in your
It
diary.
sounds like you're trying to say diarrhea.
Yeah, it totally does sound like that, but it also sounds like a cute little toy. Like it sounds like
Also, what kind of grown person wants to buy anything called diary doll?
I don't know. It was weird.
Very confusing.
So she created this actually because she wanted specifically like athletes and tennis professionals, because tennis pros have to wear their tennis whites, and women like have to wear those tiny skirts. It's regulation. You have to wear that teeny tiny freaking
it's like
skirt.
volleyball. Those teeny tiny shorts.
Whatever, it's a thing, it's tradition anyway.
Yeah.
So if you do have your period, and like I don't know if you've ever seen tennis on TV, but like those cameras are like right up these players' asses. Like
Really?
they're like high def,
Oh
like
my
crazy,
God,
because
you'd
they
be
get down
so
in like a
devastated.
low
Yeah.
lunge, and they kind of move back and forth and stuff, and
yeah,
they
yeah.
bend over, and it's just like the tiny little like faux underwear that's attached to the skirt. So it would be really scary to
Yeah.
have your period and then have to go
Yes,
play
it
a
would
big
be.
game. So that's why she made this. So I'm like, yeah, Annabelle.
That's awesome.
Good
That's
for
exactly
you. Yeah,
what
that's
it
fantastic.
needs to be for.
But then she also was saying in these interviews that she didn't see she'd get asked do you think that this is something we should be talking about more?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that the menstrual cycle can be worked with for female athletes
Mm-hmm.
so that people can just perform better? And her answer was no. She was like, no. She's like, your period is just something that happens. Like, you just have it and you get on with it. I don't think we need to make this such a big deal. We don't need to work with it.
So
it's
like she just wanted to provide the product, but not talk about
but not
it.
actually break any stigma or any taboo. And then also her language was very troubling to me. She was like, I know when I'm on my period, I'm acting crazy, and so are my daughters. And it was
Oh no.
can you not?
Oh my God.
So yeah, and then anyway.
It just sounds problematic.
It's very problematic. So, and then she also said when they asked her her comment on what Heather had actually said to this interview question when she answered girl problems, she said, "Oh, I thought it was cute how the interviewer kind of coaxed it out of her." So this whole thing is really wrapped up in being cutesy, adorable little girl problems that we don't talk about but we know about.
Ew,
And
puke.
yeah, it's just weird. So also, quick aside, I would just like to point out, because this came up in a couple articles that I read, that in 2014, so a year before this happened, in a 2014 World Cup game between the Netherlands and Argentina, there was a midfielder for Argentina, Javier Mascherano. He made it's called a brilliant save. He saved
Okay.
I don't know, he just saved something.
Saved
Anyway,
something.
did a slide save,
Okay.
tore his anus.
What?
Nobody cared.
What?
He laughed about it. He's talked about it in interviews, but it's just every
What
quote that
part
I
of
found.
his anus.
I don't know. I guess his rectum, whatever, he slid and then something bad happened and he tore his butthole.
Oh my gosh.
But it's always every time it was brought up, it was just everyone would be yeah, I tore my anus, and then everyone would be ha ha ha. Moving on. It was
Moving
never a
on.
headline.
No, of course not.
So I just wanted to
I feel
say
that should be a headline.
Yeah, I tore my
your
anus. It's
I'd be excuse me, can you please further explain?
how? What happened?
Yes.
Were your balls okay?
Yeah, precisely.
All right.
Oh,
so
man.
anyway, so that was all 2015.
Yeah.
Then in 2019, the U.S. women's national team wins the World Cup.
In what sport?
Soccer.
Okay, so we're
Football.
not talking about
for
tennis.
No, sorry, I should have
It's
said
okay.
the World Cup is soccer.
Well, there are some of us that don't know these things.
I only know the World Cup because I have so many people in my life who are
I feel
all
like I
about
should know
soccer.
that. It's confusing. Cup, bowl, opening. How are we supposed to keep track? And I actually like watching sports.
You're so funny. I'm sorry. That was cup, bowl, opening.
They're very vague. Just say what sport it is.
In a couple years ago, I think it was 2018, the World Cup, men's World Cup was on, and there's a Portuguese club around the corner from my house, and they have garage doors, so they had the garage doors up, and they were playing one of the games. They were playing Croatia, and there's a lot of Croatian people also in Vancouver, so there were tons of people watching this game. And one of my closest friends, Carly, was visiting, and I had to go to this store that was right near there, and she was like, I'm just going to stand here and watch this game for a bit. And I came back, and then everyone was still watching, and I just yelled out, everyone's a winner. And they did not like that. No. So anyway,
Somebody always has to lose.
that's how fucking sports people. Anyway, that's how I know what the World Cup is. So yeah,
Interesting.
there was a coach, is a coach. Her name's Dawn Scott, and she was the head coach for the U.S. team.
Yeah.
And she'd actually been tracking the U.S. team's menstrual cycle since 2010.
Whoa.
So every player had to track their menstrual cycle.
Amazing.
And then she was privy to the tracking.
Cool.
And it was because she knew that, she knew about the phases, and she knew
Yeah.
that certain phases were very important to things like healing from an injury.
Oh, yes. I've
Yeah.
heard this.
Yeah, well, it's like what you were talking about with blood getting to the muscles at certain
Yes,
parts.
Of course,
and
that makes sense.
yeah, and even just bones, hormones and bones
So
actually.
they actually play
they're
a big-
friends.
Yeah, exactly.
And because she was a high performance coach, she was, doing all this stuff. And it was just purely like, if there's a problem, then you solve it with, that's the thing about sports people too. It's all about data, numbers, stats, you know?
It's true.
Yeah. And like, that's such a big part of the game now as well. So it's like, if there's a problem and it can be solved by doing this, then we're doing it. So she actually really wanted was work with the menstrual phase to create a comprehensive training plan. But because it needed to be so individual, because everything we know about periods, it's highly individualized, and it would need to be tailored to each player. She just like didn't really know where to start. There's 23 people on that team. She's not a scientist.
No.
So she just kind of was doing the tracking, old school. And then she met Dr. Georgie Brunvels. I don't know if I'm saying that right. What a name. And she is a research scientist who focuses on menstruation and female athletes.
Okay.
She actually works...
So this is her field.
This is her field. This is what she does. And she actually works for a company called Oreco, which is a bioanalytics company, and it uses data to enhance athletic performance. And so this company has, you know, like the female body as like a subgenre, because before it was, you know,
it was never
you're 70% of a man, who cares?
Yeah.
You know, so this company was like taking all this data and like putting together plans so that you could always reach the most potential in whatever it is that you're doing athletics wise.
Yeah.
She also created a app called Fitter, FITR Woman. And it's a tracking app that provides daily training and nutrition suggestions based on which phase you're in.
Oh, I like that.
But it's like updates every day. So the more information you put in it, the more it can work for you.
Okay.
So
that sounds like everything you'd want in a tracking app.
Well, we're going to talk about the tracking app a little bit more later. So we'll save it for that.
Okay.
So yeah, they teamed up, and the first thing that they did was they gave every member of the team a comprehensive questionnaire specifically regarding their menstrual cycle. Yeah. So it was like, how long is it? What kind of pain do you experience? What color is it? What texture is it? How's your mood? It was everything. It's all very imperative. Yeah.
A lot of insight.
Yes, it would, because then the data was turned into an exact menstrual cycle profile for each player, and the coaches and the medical team could reference this thing.
I love this so much. Just
Isn't
the fact
it so
that,
cool?
I mean, I will have to, this is my assumption that this is happening because there's a female coach.
You're not wrong.
Right? Because I'm like, this is brilliant and makes so much sense. But also, thank you, someone, for paying attention to this and actually like implementing it.
I know.
It's crazy.
It's so great.
It's so awesome.
Yeah, it's just, I love this. And like, I don't care about sports, but it's just like, I don't know, this is so, I just, you know, I want everyone to do their best.
Yeah, but also like, knowledge is power, and then you get to do your best.
Yeah.
It's so awesome.
Totally. So, okay, this is the other thing too, is actually the time frame that they had to do all of this was incredibly short, because even though Dawn had been tracking the period since 2010 for ages, she only hooked up with Dr. Georgie like 6 months before the tournament for the World Cup, and then the actual like comprehensive plan was only complete 50 days before they got there. So it was basically just like the bubble around the World Cup, like the 6 weeks surrounding the World Cup, including during the games, which I think last for about 6 weeks. So it was just like very like there wasn't any time to just like test it. They just I mean, it was all database.
Yeah,
so
they just like went with it.
Yeah. And then also each teammate was using then the Fitter Woman app, so they were tracking every day. And so this plan was constantly being like updated to keep it relevant.
Right.
So it wasn't like they just did it and then it stayed stagnant, because like we know it fluctuates.
It fluctuates.
So, and then also like the coach Dawn would have access to like all of this information from the app, and then she would be like texting players who had like the most symptoms and just be like, hey, like you're in this phase right now, and so like you might want to try this and this and this, and like we know your sleep gets really impacted around this time, so make sure that you're like blah blah blah.
Have such a nice coach.
I know,
like that just sounds so lovely.
Great. So the 4 pillars of the strategy were sleep, hydration, nutrition, and recovery. And I've listened to a couple interviews now with Dawn, and she really stresses recovery. She doesn't think that people put enough emphasis on it in athletics.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So, and that's another thing too, is when you're tracking your period, you'll have a better idea of like how to recover. Like, do you need a certain kind of rest? Can you push it here and there?
Yeah.
So all of these are treated correctly. You end up with like an optimal like thing to counter a player's menstrual cycle symptoms. So you're working with it. You're not
Wow.
working against it. And
I love that so much.
it's so great.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the other thing that they were doing too is when they were actually at the World Cup,
Yeah.
like in the hotel that they were staying at, they had just plastered, like the medical team and the coaches plastered signs everywhere that had like tips for different phases.
Oh my gosh.
So then the
So like
player,
other people could see it?
I think everyone, well, maybe not, because I don't know how like how private
Private.
you are
Yeah, maybe.
during, I would imagine pretty like,
No idea.
who knows, but
knows?
there's like paper signs all over
Okay.
the place. Like in the elevator, there's all these signs about food, assuming you're going down to eat. So it's like, if you're in phase 3, then you should think about
Oh,
eating
shit, seriously?
this, and this. Yeah,
Whoa,
totally.
that's
And then
so
like
cool.
the player can pull
We should
out.
have that on our fridge.
Yeah.
It's like boom, boom, boom. That's actually so smart.
should just do that in my apartment, to be honest.
Yeah.
I never know what phase I'm in until it's too late.
Yeah.
So yeah, they had all these signs everywhere, and then like the player could just open their phone and check if they didn't already know what phase they were in, like, oh, this pertains to me. And so not only were they getting like
Wow.
notifications from their phone, from the app, texts from Dawn, now there's paper all over the place telling them what they should be doing for exercise, nutrition, sleep, all that stuff.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. So, oh yeah, and they also had
Wow,
like,
okay. I just like ideas. It's just like, woo. I don't know. I just did devil horns for ideas.
oh, it's like little antennas. Knowledge.
Knowledge.
So like a lot of, obviously, well, I would imagine professional teams who were like, you know, away playing for long periods of time, they had a chef. And so then the chef was like fully aware of the nutrition based on the menstrual cycle. And then he was making like anti-inflammatory, antioxidant juice shots every morning. So the players would come down, and the first thing that they would do is they would take these shots that were like tailored for each phase, and every shot had ginger in it. And this one interview that I heard with Dawn, she was talking about the chef, and like she freaked out at him one day because they'd run out of ginger, and he was like, I'm out of ginger, and she was like, we need more ginger.
I mean, ginger is really good for you.
Yeah, I've just started eating a lot of ginger, and
That's
I
good.
don't regret it.
No. Great.
So yeah, the U.S. team won the World Cup against the Netherlands in a game that was 2-0, and possibly the most high-profile example of the success of working with the menstrual cycle to optimize player performance was midfielder Rose Lavelle, who's just so cute. I think she was like 22 when this all happened too. So
Really?
it's just like, oh, so great. So she scored the breakaway goal that secured the team's lead, and the
Wow.
next day she started her period.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but sometimes the day before for me is gnarlier than day one
Yeah.
because you're just waiting for it to happen.
You feel like there's like a heavy weight right above your vagina.
Yeah.
It's just like, I'm ready for you.
Exactly. So, like, that's pretty cool.
That is actually
It's
really cool.
And then also, if you Google like women's U.S. team like winning the World Cup, and then you see all these photos of like this team who just like, I also just love the women's soccer team because they're all such badasses. Like they truly are. I mean, I know you love Glennon Doyle. So
I do.
obviously,
And
Abby Wambach.
Abby Wambach.
So she wasn't on that. She retired, I think, in 2015.
Yeah, exactly.
But you know, she like her. Just picture her.
Yeah.
But like kind of angry, and then like
Love it.
23 of them.
I love it.
It's great. So when you see them like win, and it's just like the neck pulsing screams that are happening, I'm like, oh yes, love it.
Love it.
So after the World Cup, Dr. Georgie, I'm only calling her Dr. Georgie because I can't say her last name.
That's
I'm not
okay.
trying
I like
to like
Dr. Georgie.
Okay, cool. So she ended up having like a whole bunch of professional teams come to her
wow.
being like, hey, like we saw what you did with the women's
Yeah.
team, and we
Please
want to
help us.
win.
Yeah.
So now she works with like tennis teams, swimming,
God,
rugby,
yes.
like all these places, putting
my
together these like
gosh.
comprehensive training plans
Yeah.
based on each individual player's menstrual cycle.
Good.
So cool. And
Wow,
then
there must be so much data now.
there's probably so much data. And
so
definitely
awesome.
like she works for like a company like Areco. I would imagine there's like a lot. Like
I hope
she has
it
a
just
lot of
is like
resources.
driving like more energy and excitement into like, okay, like this is actually something we should be looking at.
Yeah. So
Because it clearly is.
and it clearly works.
Yeah.
It clearly works. So Coach Dawn continues to implement the menstrual phase strategy into her work, and then she also speaks to athletes and coaches. Like she goes and gives talks, including male coaches, because they're a little like squeamish about it. But again, they saw it work, and who doesn't want to win more than a man?
Women.
What? Yeah, she goes and talks about the benefits of working with the cycle and working with it, and not stop pretending it's not a factor. And she talks a lot about usually even players too, and even like players who have uteruses, like they're a little squeamish about it because it's like, we're really going to talk about periods.
Yeah.
But then the more you talk about it, the more you remove the stigma, and then the more normal it becomes.
It's what we do every day.
It's what we do.
It's why we here.
But that's totally like, you just need to talk about it. Like that's the biggest thing, and then tap into
and
it.
Pretty much just dissolves the taboo as soon as you just start talking about it. It just takes that veil down, and you're like, oh, it's actually not that big of a deal.
It's not that big of a deal, and it's also like it can be used as a tool.
Precisely.
So I found a lot of information for this podcast from Georgie Brunvel's podcast.
Oh, very cool.
Yes, she has a podcast with another doctor. Her name's Jess Piasecki, and a journalist named Lucy Lomax. What a cool name.
I like that name. That's such a journalist name.
I know.
Lucy Lomax, reporting live.
It's called Female Athlete, and it's on all the podcast platforms. If you are somebody who is athletic or considers yourself athletic, or you're an athlete,
and you don't have to identify as a woman.
No, you definitely don't.
You absolutely do not.
There's a ton of information in this podcast. Like I was just scrolling like, oh, I want to listen to all of these. So I would definitely recommend it. And also, if you work in team sports, I feel like you should be listening to this podcast. Like I feel like, you'd probably have to go through the parents, and I know some parents are not super stoked still on things like sex education. So, but like, this is totally something that you can be putting into team sports in high schools, and you should be putting it into college and university teams. So
you should be.
Yeah, if you work in team sports,
especially like university sports, isn't there like so much money going? Into that.
Oh yeah, and at that point you're over 18. So what can your parents say?
So yeah, exactly.
And then the Fitter Woman app is free.
It's free.
It's free, and it's in the App Store. So if you are again like an athletic person, or you just want to go and check it out,
even though it's called Fitter Woman, which I know like I wish it wasn't, but if that information can help you and
it's still a really good resource.
It's still a good resource. Hopefully they will adapt and learn that maybe women
perhaps one day they'll change it.
But
I mean, her podcast is also called Female Athlete, so whatever. And
I mean, I think it's just like, I think with everything, it takes increments of like effort. I think menstruation in sports is something that clearly in 2015 wasn't even talked about.
Or it was talked about
far from just menstruation in general. So break one taboo, and then hopefully that opens doors for people to talk about, well, I'm an athlete and I menstruate, but I don't identify as a woman. And that whole conversation. So I think it's just opening the door for more people to share their experiences. And I think just if you take just the knowledge of what your phases are, what's good for your body to do, if you have a uterus, this is very important.
It really is. Yeah, definitely. So I love this story. I can't believe it was only in 2019. And I
feel like I want to go watch that game. Is it one game? I guess it's one game, right?
I mean, well, it's a series of games leading up to a final game.
That's I'll watch the last game.
Tournaments work. You can watch the last game. Yeah, but it's pretty great. You can watch Rosie Lavelle's goal.
Yeah.
That's a nice moment.
Great. Yeah.
It's very nice. So
that sounds great.
Yeah. So yeah. That's
so cool.
That's sports.
Sports
and
and menstruation.
menstruation.
Yeah. It's a good one. It's a nice, easy breezy one.
Yeah, it's not dark.
No, it's
is nice.
actually, it's nice and uplifting, which I really like. I like
appreciate those as well.
that. Yeah, it's good. It's good.
All right. Well, catch y'all
this is
later.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Why So Mysterious is hosted by Sara Jonsdottir and Raven McLean. Audio is produced and edited by Sonia Inke. Original music is by Malcolm Holt and Alexis Young.
Check out our website, whysomysterious.com, for more information about this episode and other episodes. You can also email us with questions or topics you'd like to hear us cover on the show at whysomysteriousPod@gmail.com.
Follow us on Instagram at Why So Mysterious Pod for updates, fun facts, and general outrage. If you're an audio listener, but you'd rather be a voyeur, check us out on YouTube.
If you like the show, tell your friends, and don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe.
Until next time.